take a look at the Director's Take here. Cover this and make a video. We need Charles. Charles, please.
Google Cloud.
Director's Take. Overwatch. Soda right away? Nah. Decaf, guys. It's past midnight. Alright, Director's Take. I heard a couple little bits, but we're gonna give the real reaction here.
As Season 4 ends, I'd like to look at the game's balance. This season we saw a wide selection of heroes get played, and for the most part, the game felt fairly balanced. From a win rate perspective, Seasons 3 and 4 were some of the most balanced in recent Overwatch history. With this in mind, let's look at 3 different topics from Season 4 and talk about how they will change in Season 5 and beyond. Specifically, I'd like to go over heroes like Junker Queen and Lifeweaver, one-shots, and crowd control abilities in 5 vs 5.
Junker Queen was the soup du jour. She was the hero of this expansion. I suspect that's what they're going to do for each expansion. Each season is they're just going to make a certain tank and a certain hero OP, certain DPS OP. They don't really touch supports that way, but they're just going to make a certain DPS and a certain tank OP for the season, and then they're going to nerf them at the end of the season.
5. There were a few standouts from a tuning perspective in Season 4. In the mid-season patch, Junker Queen was given a series of buffs, and she really started to dominate. Her win rate popped up by about 5%, and she went from being one of the lowest picked tanks to one of the highest. For most skill tiers, Queen and Reinhardt were the 2 most picked tanks for the latter half of the season.
Reinhardt?
However, at Masters and above, Queen is far and away the most picked tank. One of the big changes that we made was to increase the healing received
even in quick play, which means I'm playing at high MMR.
We like this addition to her playstyle, but it makes Queen too survivable, so we'll be reducing the health she receives from commanding Shout from 200 to 150 to compensate. We'll also be increasing the cost of her ult by a small amount since she is getting it at a faster rate than before the mid-season changes.
I don't think Lifeweaver needs buffs. People think he needs... So, this is one of the problems with meta and... meta rhetoric and basically the zeitgeist of video games, not just Overwatch, video games in general being controlled by people that are influencers because they aren't always good at what they do. Lifeweaver, I think, is very good. People have problems with him not having enough damage. I don't think that's a problem because he has a lot of utility to offset it. He does, if you watch any of the people that do 0 to 5, basically placements to top 500 or GM, play Lifeweaver, he does extremely well. And the reason that they aren't leveling up is because Blizzard is not allowing them. Whatever weighted system they have in the background is not taking into account their performance in the game. You'll see them outperform other healers by 30%, and then they still won't get, they won't increase in rank. That has nothing to do with their, performance in the game. It has everything to do with the MMR system in the background that Blizzard fucked up and isn't taking into account their performance. Like, healing in the game should actually be heavily weighted. And my guess is whatever system they have in the background that will take into account, let's say you off DPSing as a healer, gives a lot of weighting to off DPSing. And since Lifeweaver can't really effectively off DPS, he generally doesn't get, he doesn't rank up. And that's once again a problem with Blizzard. There's like a modifier in the background that other healers are getting that increase, let's call it like an intermatch rating. So your performance rating in the match, let's go with that. Performance rating in the match is influenced by probably your off DPS, and since Lifeweaver can't off DPS effectively, he doesn't get that modifier, despite the fact that he puts out a shitload of healing, and he has really good area control, and with his tree, for instance, is actually really fucking good. That's why I blow it up all the time as Pharah, besides the fact that it's fucking hilarious when you do it. He has really, really good area control, meaning when he's in an area, he can definitely influence how the battle turns out in that area, not necessarily with like crowd controls like Mei has, for instance, just with his sheer ability to put out healing. And his ability to save, I guess, is not being prioritized properly. so the game doesn't take into account when he saves people. Because if there's clutch saves, especially on a tank, that should be a huge boost to your performance rating in the match. The fact that you see someone like Craigie, for instance, that's still in Diamond, he's been in Diamond for like the last 3 weeks, topping the healing turrets all the fucking time, and he can barely get out of Diamond. It goes to show you that there isn't something wrong with Lifeweaver, there's something wrong in terms of Blizzard's weighting system in the background to raise people's ranks. And Lifeweaver, as I mentioned, I don't think needs damage buffs. If they're going to go damage buffs with them, I wholly disagree with damage buffs. That's just the kids thinking that damage makes a character better, and they see the fact that they don't increase in MMR. They don't see the fact that their rank increases despite their performance, and they're like, oh, well, the only difference is obviously I'm not doing enough damage. When in fact they're still doing their role as a healer. It's just Blizzard has a weighted system in the background, has a weighted system to determine how you perform, your performance rating in the game, and that influences your rank. It's not about wins and losses. That was in Overwatch 1. It's not purely about wins and losses. And one of the reasons they have an obfuscated system, 15-5, was it 20-7 before? The reason they have an obfuscated system is so you can't figure out what directly influences your rank. It's obfuscated. You can't tell what variables are being tweaked. For the most part, what variables are being tweaked. You need an extra long data set to figure out what exactly you are doing that's influencing your rank. Which, is beyond the attention span of most people for making trends, and people that actually care probably don't care enough to put that together. It's a really good system in preventing people from figuring out the weighted system, which then they could game to get to higher MMR. They could figure out exactly what dials they have to tweak on the character to effectively get GM or top 500. And it could be a lot of different things. It might just not be off DPSing. It might be a sit or the amount of people that you hit, so your interactions with other characters. It might be you using your abilities on characters besides yourself, like the flower petal platform, for instance, or something. It might be damage, how many characters you damage, how much damage you do, if you get a killing blow, which it probably keeps track of but doesn't tell you. There's a lot of stats that the game really should tell you that it doesn't tell you, and a couple of stats that you don't need to know about it tells you, like deaths and mitigation. Both of those things are basically fucking worthless, except for the tank, which you need to know whether or not the tank is staying alive. But that being said, almost everyone's going to die on the same wave with each other. It's very difficult to get out of sync by more than a couple deaths, because you're simply just going to be around your team. Unless you're trickling, you're going to be around the team. I get out of sync as far as deaths go because I can be there at the beginning of the battle, die a little bit into the beginning of the battle, come back and be there at the end of the battle too. And that's not something most characters can do unless they move really, really fucking fast. Farrah can definitely fly besides her abilities, which allow her to traverse large parts of the map. She can get back to the battle very, very fast. There's almost no heroes that can do that. Sombra maybe too. But yeah, anyways, Lifeweaver. There's a lot of people that are confusing the fact that he doesn't do a lot of damage with the fact that they think he's a bad character. He's not a bad healer. I'd say he's a pretty good healer, and he really does not need to have buffs. He really doesn't need to have buffs, but he does. So, yeah. Anyways, yeah, they're probably gonna buff him as far as healing goes, or just damage. He really doesn't need any of this.
Lifeweaver is a really dynamic hero. Some of the plays that people have pulled off with him during Season 4 were pretty astonishing. However, he's not powerful enough to be a solid pick for most players. Previously,
He is a solid
we
pick.
stated that we would like there to be a reason to pick new heroes over others in the roster.
He basically has a heal that does not miss targets, guys. He has a giant AoE heal that is also area control, which is his tree. And he can get out of tough situations not only with his dash, but his platform, which he can use to cheese like shit like hallways and doorways. Which almost no characters can do that. He is very good at escape. And once again, this doesn't always show up in stats, and that's a bad place to be.
This is still our goal for new heroes. We want him to bring something new to the table. However, at the moment, we are looking for the best way to bring Lifeweaver to a baseline. Once people are playing him more, we will get a cleaner read on the character. Players will either start utilizing the varied parts of his kit, or we can look into adding something else into it. In Season 5, there will be quite a few changes, mostly buffs, coming to Lifeweaver. We'll have specific details in the patch notes, but players can expect increases to his healing and damage output, a heal on life grip, a slightly reduced hitbox, and...
What the fuck? He's definitely going to be meta in the next season. So I guess like this is one of the shitty things. So they gave him a season to kind of figure out whether or not their stats are on enough. But they're the influencers, the people on Twitch, are saying he's shit so much that no one plays him. The people that do play them are probably at low MMR because they don't care, right? And the people that actually, and they probably get ridiculed constantly for it, and they don't know enough about the game to know whether or not that's true or not, so then they swap characters, right? When people at high MMR will be in tune with what everyone's saying in the community that he's shit, and therefore they don't get they don't get any stats because everyone's saying he's shit, and therefore no one plays him, regardless of the fact that he's not shit. That's rough. So they're gonna make him super OP. He's gonna become this is kind of sad. This is the effect of what the community does. Basically, a Dunning Kruger community does to a hero, where they think that they're so knowledgeable about what's going on that they effectively lead to a scenario where a character can't be balanced properly unless they give a lot of incentives to play him, and which is what it sounds like they're doing. Like he doesn't need any buffs to his healing at all. He has an auto heal. He like shoots it. It's like Mercy at range. He can shoot at basically anyone at range, and there's almost no chance of missing him. That's pretty incredible. And lots of healing at range.
In Season 5, there will be quite a few changes, mostly buffs, coming to Lifeweaver. We'll have specific details in the patch notes, but players can expect increases to his healing and damage output, a heal on life grip, a slightly
Christ.
reduced hitbox, and some quality of life changes to Petal platform.
None of that stuff he needs. Like maybe damage output at the minimum, but even then, I don't think people are going to be happy until they can shit on people. And I definitely do not, unless it's a specialized healer, a specialized support. I do not think supports should be able to shit in 1v1 on DPS at all. They should run for their life. And if they have abilities to escape, even better. Kiriko should not be challenging you to a 1v1, have a chance of winning, or no risk involved with doing so. That should not be a thing. And they do. If Anna does it, she sleep darts you, you're dead. And that should not be a thing. Healers should not be assassins at all. They should, if they meet the 1v1 versus if they meet 1v1 versus a DPS, it's pretty much should be a loss for them. It's just by default should be a loss for them. And they should not be able to take on that situation because of the role they're playing, because of what they're supposed to be. And if they want to play DPS, supports can play DPS. They don't need to play support. They choose to play support, and they shouldn't be capable at all of 1v1ing anyone. And it's different if there's a healer and another healer, or a healer and a DPS. You're fucked as a DPS. But if they're alone, they should not be able to challenge you at all unless it's a specialized healer, like a Zen, for instance. He has offsets, he has downsides to his character, like his healing is generally much worse, but he also does a lot of damage. Fucking Kiriko, like fucking walking, juking you super hard with your tiny model and then throwing 120 damage headshots. She just spams headshots at you and uses her sensu bean, which gives her invulnerability, and then she just teleports out if she fails to kill you. That's not where you should be. That should not be a thing. One shots from Widowmaker, finally. They addressed Piggy, which I don't think they need to change at all, mind you. Maybe they may need to make it so people can try and escape, but I think you should still be able to one combo you because there's a lot of teleprompt, telegraphed. Abilities are very telegraphed, meaning you can tell when he's about to throw a hook at you. That's different than a Widowmaker one-shotting you from across the map. And once again, this goes into the Dunning-Kruger community that's just reliant on streamers that aren't necessarily really good or really knowledgeable about what they're doing, going, I hate dying to Piggy, I hate dying to Piggy, when they don't even fucking mention Widowmaker just one-tapping you across the map until Piggy's gone. Piggy, I don't think, needed a nerf as much as Widowmaker needed a nerf. And I've talked about Widowmaker even back in Overwatch 1. These guys have been playing it for fucking years, although this isn't really all that different than Dead by Daylight. Was in the same case when I first started playing it, and killers basically sucked dick at the game.
We'll continue to monitor both Junker Queen and
It's crazy because
Lifeweaver
there's a lot of
and
people
make
that play
additional
Overwatch.
changes if necessary. The community has also voiced concerns over the number of one-shots from both Widowmaker and Hanzo. We'd like to reduce the frequency
Hanzo?
of these in-game, as well as shore up some of the extreme
Hanzo I don't
sight
think is
lines
a
in some
problem.
of our maps.
He
Widow's
has range
damage
and you can
fall-off
see
will
him.
change from 70 to
chance to
100
dodging it.
meters to 40 to 60 meters. The damage fall-off scalar will also increase from 30% to 50%. She will still have
She has damage fall off. There's some characters you don't even realize have damage fall off, guys, because I think Blizzard doesn't use a linear damage drop off like that. It's waveform, so it just goes burr, burr, like that. And it's your one ranger at higher damage and one ranger at lower damage, it's like a square instead of having a ramped drop off, which like PlanetSide 2 has that. That should be a thing that's part of your games, and I don't think it is. Like Tracer, for instance, you can easily tell when you're outside of her juicy range. And things like McCree, you can also tell. I didn't even know she had damage drop off. I don't think I've experienced that. When you get shot in the brain, you die. Damage fall off scalar will also increase from 30 to 50%. In one shot, she has the ability to one shot 200 HP heroes at 50 meters or less. Further than that, no longer be a killing blow. I think that should go the opposite direction. I think beyond a certain distance should be one shots, and the closer you get to the character, the less effective she is. Oh my god, a sniper that's only effective at range! As I mentioned before, I really don't think that they should get rid of her one-shots. Rather, they should make her more vulnerable when she is one-shotting. Scope time, so she can't scope as easily. They could change slew rate, so you can only turn so fast as well, so it's more something where you have to make an accurate shot at range. Those are two really big things that could really fuck up her character without, getting rid of her ability to deliver a one-shot kill, which I think should still be in the game. There should just be risk associated with it, right? Yeah, I don't think this is the call. This is what they should be doing at all. Just making her more like she's not a character that should be, hey, you get closer to me, then I'll be more likely to kill you. That's not how snipers work. But once again, what am I? A small mom and pop streamer here? So, no.
Hanzo will receive a slight nerf to his damage so that he is no longer able to one-shot 250 health heroes. His sonic arrow will also be more recognizable by the enemy team. The intent here is to reduce his kills that feel like they come out of nowhere. We are constantly discussing the nature of one-shots in Overwatch 2 and whether they are healthy for the game in general.
I really think Widow one shot should still remain, and they're like adjusting slew rate, which is how fast you can turn your camera. So how fast you can whip your camera around really fast. Adjusting slew rate, so you have a minimal like area of effect or angle of engagement, or adjusting your scope speed would definitely help with that. So when you get in close to Widowmakers, it's much more detrimental to them. That being said, I'm pretty sure you're still going to see the weird shit with people just snapping across the screen and shit. Which is cheating. That's a different story, and there's a boatload of cheating in Overwatch. There's almost no crowd control in the game besides Sombra. Sombra is very, very good at it, and for some reason, big streamers don't talk about how good she is.
Lastly, I'd like to talk a bit about crowd control abilities in-game. When we launched Overwatch 2, we made some significant changes to our combat model. The biggest was the shift from 6v6 to 5 versus 5. A part of that change was to remove most of the crowd control abilities
and neutered a lot of
heroes,
May, for instance.
Heroes. Overall, we think that this was a positive change to the game.
This is a MOBA. This is MOBA. This isn't fucking Valorant.
Pinball machine. But we have a lot of high mobility heroes in the roster, and the team can't always rely on their tank to take of them. So we're softening our approach here. We don't want to return to the state the game was in previously, but we feel like there is room for more CC.
They don't want to return to the way the game was originally because that would show they failed at making Overwatch 2, which they have, in my opinion. The game is worse than it was in Overwatch 1. And this is a compromise because they realize what they have is not working at all because people are leaving the game. Putting aside the fact that they pissed away 4 years by making Overwatch 2, which is almost nothing to begin with because what they were supposed to be making was PvE apparently, and then they failed at doing that. So what do we get out of 4 years? Push and push and a couple heroes. That's it. Lifeweaver. What are the new heroes anyways? Sojourn came out prior to Overwatch 2. Kiriko. Ramada. That's pretty much it. I guess. Actually, Ramada might even been in the game prior to Overwatch 1 launching, or Overwatch 2 launching. Yeah, because they fail to make an Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2 is the worst version of Overwatch 1. Regardless of monetary model, that doesn't matter. They could have swapped the monetary model. The only thing that there's probably positive that they got rid of was shield meta. But even then, from what I understand, shield meta was basically already over at the end of Overwatch 1. So did it really even matter? Not really. And there's ways they could have tackled shield meta without actually um, going completely, just get rid of all shields for the most part. And even then, they're changing that back with like increasing, for instance, the shielding on Brig, right? Shielding on Brig, and I think even Reinhardt got a buff to his shield a little bit, and then Zarya got a buff to her bubbles. So yeah, a lot of high mobility heroes in the roster. Yeah,
But we have a lot of high mobility
there's CC
heroes
was
in the
there to deal with
roster,
them.
and the team can't always rely on their tank to take of them. So we're softening our approach here. We don't want to return to the state the game was in previously, but we feel like there is room for more CC, especially soft CC, in our lineup. We'll be making changes to both Mei and Cassidy
Mei
for
is
Season
absolutely
5
fucking
with this
worthless
in
without
mind.
her original CC.
Mei's
She's
endothermic
so
blaster
neutered.
will be updated. The primary fire will still slow targets, but it will also build up to an effect that will apply a much larger slow for 1.5 seconds. For players of the original game, this will feel familiar to the way her old weapon worked.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
Cassidy's magnetic grenade will also get updated to deal less damage, as well
Problems
as
with the fact
applying
that
an
she doesn't
effect
really
that
CC
slows and
people.
blocks movement abilities.
Problem is you can't set up for icicle to the face. In the original game, you could CC people and then freeze them, and then you icicle them in the face. You can't do that. Even if they slow down, you're still going to be using the endothermic blaster if you're close to them. So what effectively did that do? Nothing. That didn't do anything at all. Like anyone that was trying to run away from you already will still not be able to run away from you. But that's it. That's the only effective thing that it's doing. So pointless. Maybe this isn't the whole change log. Maybe there's more things that are going on here, but pointless because you aren't setting people up for your icicle shots. I mean, you kind of are if you have a slow, and then you can try shooting them in the face, but all they're going to do is start jumping up and down, and you're probably going to miss shots or hit them in the chest or whatever. The flamethrower, the endothermic blaster, still like in close quarters, if you can land, it does about the same amount of damage as icicles do for DPS. If you're just trying to hit someone, you hit their chest, not counting headshots. So, kind of pointless. And I guess they don't want to go back to the original endothermic blaster because then it shows that they failed at balancing Mei. This is one of the problems with this isn't just Blizzard for Overwatch. This is Blizzard in a nutshell. Whenever they do something wrong, they will not renege on it. They like in World of Warcraft, in a lot of other games, they do something wrong. They have to tweak it slightly so it seems more like, hey, this is actually what we really want to do, and it's still what we really want to do, and we're still right. But at the same time, they basically fucked the pooch, and now they have to find a way out without basically showing that they were wrong. And I don't actually think that's the right decision at all. I think when you fuck things up, you can just revert it. Who fucking cares? Just revert that shit and go back to the way that it worked better. And then you can still design a new system around it. But right now, it just doesn't work the way that you want it to. Mei is not a viable character. The Meis that you see running around and icicling people in the face are probably running an aimbot. Because there is an aimbot for Mei. And she'll just literally you'll just get icicled in the face constantly by her. And it's fucking obnoxious. I've had it happen playing Pharah. Yeah, and it is extremely, extremely obnoxious. There's cheating for all different characters in the game. Mei in general is not a very good character. The one benefit of her was her ability to control an area and get people into shitty situations with her walls and her blaster. She shouldn't be running around like a shit Hanzo. That's not the way her character should be. It just shows poor design decisions from the developers when they first came out with Mei. Not first came out, when they changed Mei for Overwatch 2. They didn't know what they wanted to do with her, and they're like, oh, well, it's just up her damage for a blaster. And you're like, they're secondary that you can use at range because you're not close enough to close the gap, or you're trying to run away or something. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just like, why? That's like not even related to her kit, where she gets people in close quarters and gets them into a bad situation, and then they fucks her face with a freeze, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, you just play like Hanzo at long range, and you're like, what? And then her fucking ult gets gobbled or despawns or some stupid shit like that, or people run out of it anyways. It's just, yeah. And one of the reasons you got to get in close quarters, like her balance in Overwatch 2, what the developers did, in no way, shape, or form. I played a lot of Mei in Overwatch 1. In no way, shape, or form reflected the character, which is this close quarters brawler with a lot of survivability and something that you really don't want to get near because it's going to turn into a fucking blender, right? And they changed it like, oh no, let's just shoot icicles at long range of people. That's a great idea. Her ult literally plays into the way that she was supposed to play with their slow and then freeze and the fucking walls. They're like, yeah, I don't. I mean, all it takes is basically one big streamer to say, "Oh my god, Mei is so OP" for them, and they could buff her icicles. They could buff her icicles till like your eyes bleed, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm just playing Mei for icicles." In no way, shape, or form representing the character. You can literally launch a tactical nuke every time you fire a launcher if they want to. There's all sorts of different ways you can balance the game, and that doesn't mean it's a good way to balance the game, but at least it's kind of going the right direction. But I don't know what they were thinking with her freeze effect. I mentioned this right when Overwatch 2 came out. It didn't make sense. They neutered her and gave her back like a shitty version of Hanzo. Jeez, guys.
On top of these changes, we'll also be making some tweaks to several other heroes in Season 5. We can't wait for you to see them when the patch notes go live, as well as the other fun things we have coming to the game that season. As always, thanks for reading, and I'll see you in-game.
Probably doesn't actually play the game. We have a lot of high mobility heroes in the roster, and a team that can always rely on their tank to take care of them, so we're softening our approach here. We don't want to return to the state of game was previously, but we feel that there's room for CC, especially soft CC. Oh no, who could have predicted this? Yeah, no shit. When you have high mobility heroes and you literally had a game mechanic to deal with them in different ways, and then you just got rid of it? Mind-boggling. Overwatch 2 is generally just a worse game than Overwatch 1. Just a lot of the design decisions they made just are fucking terrible, and then they wasted a bunch of time on PvE. That turned into nothing. You're gonna get some crappy missions. It seems like Overwatch 2 was made by two people who had opposing ideology or forced to release a combined product. Called, Horse. It's called, Camel is a horse. Designed by a committee. Herding cats. Oh, Kruger, right? We're gonna get ridiculed by this. The common consensus right now is Lifeweaver sucks, and that's part of the problem because Blizzard, no one's playing the character as we just talked about. Okay, let's move along here, guys. I want to play some Riftbreaker here. That's tough. That's a lot. That's pretty in depth. We're gonna cover the patch notes obviously when they come out too. I'll take a peek at that. We need to make a video on that. We want to get right into these bands and players. Yes, they do. Kill shot, you can tell with Hanzo. We ran into a 4-man squad with one PC player last week, 2 weeks ago, I think. Last week, 2 weeks ago. No. They're running a 4 squad with Zim players and one gamepad or one keyboard and mouse player.